Hello again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads with my partner, co-host, friend, family member, Mr. Sean Francis. I am Brian Altunian, and here for another episode. Today's guest does not come from the world of special needs, and yet is so integral in the growth of individuals. And so if you've got a child that is getting to the age where they're going to age out of the system and you're not exactly sure what to do, you're going to be inspired by Kyle's story. So hang out for another episode of Just Two Dads. Beautiful. Welcome back, everybody. I am Brian Altunian alongside Mr. Sean Francis, and we are Just Two Dads, episode number 1. I always mess up the numbers. Episode 132, Sean, 133? 132.
You know, we're either at 132 or 133. I honestly am not sure. It's one of those two.
We started this 2.5 years ago as just two dads of children that had some special needs considerations, and we were talking in the world of our chosen profession of financial services, and we catered specifically to special needs families. And then what we found were there were so many amazing warriors and contributors to the community that we thought, my gosh, we should have a conversation with these folks and see what it is that they're doing, because I never knew that resource existed. I never knew that this kind of help was available. And we thought, well, if we don't know about it, other people probably don't know about it as well. And so what started out as a conversation between just two dads began this platform again 2.5 years ago. Believe it or not, Sean, in August, I think we're at 3 years we've been doing this.
Are you serious? That's crazy.
Yeah, 3 years that we've been doing almost. Well, we'll stick with 2.5 years because I don't want to age myself. Time's moving already too fast. So before we jump into today's conversation, if you're catching us live on Facebook, please put comments in the comment section. If you want to say something or contribute to the conversation, we'll throw the comment up on the screen. And if you're catching us after the fact on our YouTube channel, Just Two Dads, please leave comments there. Make sure you like and subscribe. Help us boost those algorithms so that we can get the word out to as many people, because some of the folks are providing such amazing resources that everybody should know about this. If you're listening to us on podcast, thank you for letting us be a part of your day, a part of your awareness and your goal to further the efforts for the special needs community. And if you're catching us at WSTX AM radio down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, thank you for allowing us to be a part of your day as well. Sean and I are honored to be doing the work that we do. And there are not many men and dads in this conversation. So we're thrilled to be part of sort of a new path for families dealing with issues, having to deal with special needs. Two other things I want to say before we get started. Now, this is becoming like a long scroll, isn't it, Sean?
It is.
We want to thank Sean Hall, who's our producer out in Hawaii. Sean and I are in Southern California. Sean Hall is in Hawaii. He keeps us on track. He reminds us constantly about our timing. And also to the folks at Billy Footwear up in the state of Washington. Billy Footwear makes adaptive footwear. It's been a sponsor of ours for a long time. The link is in our show notes if you need some adaptive shoes or adaptive footwear. The story behind the founder is phenomenal. So we encourage you to click on that link and go, and there's a discount for you if you're looking to purchase something, but also the story is just amazing. Perseverance. And then Sean and I have been part of a men's group. And so the men's group that we were a part of dealt with certain issues. But we felt that because more dads were getting into the conversation, we wanted to form a men's group for dads and caregivers of family members or caregivers of people with special needs issues, whether you call it medically complex, disability, special needs, and anything, however you label it. If you're a caregiver, we encourage you to join us at the Den. We meet every other Sunday now, and the link to join us is going to be in the show notes here as well. So encourage you to come and join us out in the Den and talk about those things that men generally don't talk about. So safe place. All right. That's a lot of setup. Now we'll get going on the show. Thanks, Kyle, for hanging out with all that. That was exhausting. That was almost 5 minutes, Sean, partially because I talked. but hopefully we got a lot of acknowledgement. We are not short for words here, Kyle, so we may overwhelm you a little bit between Sean and I. So we're going to jump into this conversation. Before we start asking some questions, I'm going to throw it over to Sean to say hello, and I always ask him how he's doing, and his comments are always the same. So I have a feeling I know how it's going to go. Sean, how are you feeling this morning?
I'm blessed and grateful. I generally am anyway.
Yeah.
But we had a conversation you and I did a couple weeks ago about telling people that you love them and telling them why. Today, every day that matters. It matters today to us as much because today, and I got to give a quick shout out to my mom, Jan Frances Turner. Today is her birthday. And it kind of just blows me away that May is already upon us. The conversation that she and I had, you might find this hard to believe, Brian, but and I made a post about it and everything, but I just feel like now more than ever, there are a bunch of words sitting around as though there are people going, I have no idea how I would be used to adequately describe the way that guy feels about his mom. And there just aren't enough of them to adequately do so. But shout out, happy birthday to my mom. And our guest today is someone that we're anxious to be sitting down with. And that is a gentleman who is not traditionally a member of the special needs community. We have people that will tell us, you're such a great parent, you're a warrior, or this or that. And it's one thing to do that when it's your child and it's your responsibility. When someone knowingly and consciously steps forward by choice to join that community, that is something that carries a different type of appreciation. And our guest today is someone who has done that, didn't come from that background, but it sort of found him, and he's going to share that with us today, his path in special education. That is none other than Mr. Kyle Stock. Kyle, welcome to Just Two Dads.
Hello, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here. Happy birthday to your mother. Very important.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Good. Well, let's jump right into it. Kyle, you probably, like we always begin the show, and it's funny, I say this and it might sound very rote and cliche, but the type of people that we draw to the show and, are people that probably reluctantly, if at all, see themselves as heroes. But I will always say, you're incorrect. I do think that what you do is heroic. And every hero has superpowers, and a hero's superpowers come from their origin. That is dictated by where and how you were raised, who by, and what your experiences were. And usually that affects how you deal with a diagnosis. In your case, it wasn't a diagnosis that came to you. You went towards the cause in the community. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? And I got to say, the graphic that we have for your parents here on the show, that's got to be one of the coolest ones I've ever seen. Who took that picture? Did you?
Yeah, that's a selfie with a GoPro in the ocean. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Wow. And that looks like the most candid of shots. I was like, man, look up with some talented sea lion who has photographic skills or what?
No, it was I spend a lot of time in the ocean, and I frequently like to carry a GoPro with me while enjoying the ocean, and the light was right, and I just snapped a candid shot, and that's how I, in terms of that's how I perceived myself in the ocean. So that's why I gave you that photo.
That's cool.
Well, it also made me value the ocean. I thought about that as well. It's like it's so funny. I'm so weird that way. I'm looking at it thinking that must have been a beautiful day. I wonder what that moment was like. I found myself appreciating the sun, the ocean, the sand, and everything in the picture, in addition to your presence here. So now ramble off. Tell us about your origin.
It is cool. I wish we could put that picture up. Well, if people have seen, I don't even know if we can. This one even. There it is.
Look at that.
That
cool. Is fantastic. That's cool. Yeah. That's just too cool.
Yeah. All right. I had to show it because I was like, it's awesome. Anyways.
Thanks. Yes. Speaking of the ocean, I was born in Pennsylvania, and I quickly then, for Dad's work, moved and was raised in Northeast Ohio, near Cleveland, in between Cleveland and Pittsburgh in Northeast Ohio. Born and raised there, very healthy upbringing. And then eventually, after university, I discovered the ocean, or actually while I was in college, I discovered the ocean as something that I was very immediately drawn to. And after college, I moved to the Outer Banks of North Carolina to pursue a life near the ocean. And at that point, I really didn't have much of a real strong career path. I had graduated from college with a degree in literature, and I always liked to read and write, and moved to the ocean and fell just crazy. Never could see myself living away from the ocean ever again. Kid from Ohio, had a very strong draw for me, and I realized I wanted to always be near the ocean. But I didn't have a real strong career path, so I, thought about the California dream and figured that I would make a move to California. And I moved home for a few months in preparation to move to California. And while I was at home, once again, I didn't, a college graduate, didn't have much of a career path. And also along that time, is finally in my mid-20s, is finally when I discovered that I actually really do love to learn. All right. And throughout much of my academic career up until that point, school was just something that was, I realized I had to do, but I didn't.
Like a chore.
It was something that, people do. You go to elementary school, middle school, high school, and then if you're fortunate enough, you take a shot at university. But once again, I never really enjoyed the process of learning. But along this time, because of the ocean, as I learned more about the ocean and more about a natural setting like that, I also discovered that, oh my goodness, learning can be incredibly fun and valuable in a lot of different ways. So I moved home for a few months, and my mother, who I adore immensely, she had been working as an aide in various special ed classrooms, and she found it very rewarding. And not having a career path myself, moving home, needing a job, I took the opportunity to become a special ed classroom aide sub. Okay. So I'll never forget this. I showed up my very first day, walked into a middle school special ed classroom, and within minutes of sitting down, and the teacher delegated me a task of going over and helping the student with a worksheet he was working on, and I sat down with this young man, and I was, I must have been 25 or 26 at the time. I knew within minutes that I would be an educator for life, and most likely, particularly a special needs educator. But it just became so clear to me at that point, not having any career path, not having any real thought of what I would do, wanting, liking reading and writing. But I knew right then I was a teacher. And so
and Kyle, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but so was it what you were doing or what the student
he was doing,
responding? Like, what was it? What was that trigger?
It wasn't so much what I was doing, because I didn't have any experience in this whatsoever. Okay. I had zero training. I didn't know, the teacher said, go sit and help. I obviously don't remember the young man's name, but go help them with their worksheet, and sat down and just started to chat with him, and started to work through some problems with him. And whether it was a sense that I was helping them, or a sense that I was engaged with them in a positive presence in their life, or whatever it was, I just instantly knew that was a path I could.
Almost energetically, it sounds like, right? There's something that fed each other.
There was an energy. There was an energy in the engagement. There was just something that struck me very clearly that I could do it forever. And I didn't know what path I would go on at that point, but I at least had some clear idea that this was something that was meaningful and fulfilling to me. So,
interesting. Hey, keep going. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So, but then also I, as an aide sub, which is a really nice opportunity to begin the process of being an educator, to be a sub, to be an aide sub, every day I would get a phone call in the morning, and they'd say, go to this school district, to this school, into this classroom with this teacher, and a great myriad of different settings and classrooms and levels of different struggles that students have. And you see a great diversity of different classrooms, different teaching styles from different teachers, and all types of different students. So it was an amazing experience, and all of them inspired me. All of them cemented my passion for wanting to be an educator. And then eventually I ended up at the end of this, as we moved into spring and I was preparing to leave for California in that summer, I ended up in a special day school
Mm.
in my community that my mom had gotten. She had become a full-time aide in this school, and this school had a great diversity of severely disabled young people. And I ended up as an aide for like a month in a preschool autism unit.
Mm.
Okay.
Wow.
So this is more severe on the spectrum, heavily impacted. And once again, I want to say also, as we go through this, we talked about this in our pre-meeting, that I'm aware and I'm conscious of the fact that I, not having been in for a few years now, not having been in this world in schools, I am aware, and I hope to not misspeak in terms of acronyms or in terms of the most proper way to go about talking about these things. I will be as thoughtful as I can, and I am nervous about that. And I hope.
Listen, I'm a dad, and I've been in this community as a dad for 25 years, and I don't know any of them either. So I always misspeak about them as well. So you're a good company. It's all good. And by the way, I love the direction that you're talking about, because my daughter, who was actually the reason that I'm in this community, my daughter who had learning disabilities, wasn't sure what she was going to do. If I listened to her neurologist, she was never going to do anything. She was going to be stuck in assisted living her whole life. But she is an aide now and a sub now. And it was something that when she was younger, she said, I always wanted to be a teacher. So it was something that she thought of, and she has the exact same experience up in the state of New York that you were just describing, where every day she gets to go to a different classroom. She's been at different levels, elementary school and middle school. And so I don't know I guess it's not really surprising where she's finding the most joy. And at some point, she usually signs on to our podcast and says hello. She finds joy in working with children that have, special needs issues. So there's something about that where and I don't take words out of her or your mouth, but there's not pressure to be a teacher with a career, set state curriculum and all of this, this pressure to be conformist that kind of frees you up, I think, to be, to have the kind of experience that you've just described, because that's definitely been her situation, where she doesn't have to do lesson plans, but she gets to carry out and support and sub for teachers who are doing that. So I love that you're talking about this, because you're talking about a path that she can look into taking as she gets older and through this process. Interesting.
Sure. And I know that through credentialing programs and things, they do expose you to a lot of different classrooms. But it's absolutely a valuable path for anybody that is considering becoming any type of educator to go be a sub for a while, be an aide sub, be any type of sub, and move around and experience lots of different classrooms, lots of different teaching styles, lots of different communities of students. I feel like it's incredibly valuable to anybody considering taking the path of education.
Yeah.
But in this preschool classroom, I mean, this is a classroom with I think 5 students and 4 aides. Okay, and this is a classroom. Wow. This is a classroom that could be very, very intense. All right, there had been a lot of turnover in aides, because we're talking about things flying around the classroom all day. Chairs and shoes, and just it could be a very intense, very draining environment. But one of the things that I picked up on very quickly as well with these little people was that, even in all of that, even in all of the difficult moments, little moments of progress, little successes that could be found throughout the course of every single day were something that I was immediately drawn to. And you celebrate the thing. The student puts the blocks back on the shelf for the first time, and it's a gigantic celebration. In an outside world, you don't necessarily think about those successes. You don't necessarily consider them and how important they are to a family or to the young person themselves. And so I was very much drawn to that. And I, no matter how difficult it was, I never went home and thought, oh gosh, I don't want to go back there tomorrow. This is awful. This is terrible. Every time I'd go home, I'm like, wow, that was really intense. But it was tomorrow. Let's go back tomorrow and see if we can find one of those little successes, find one of that little bit of progress. And you feel like you're really, truly making a difference. So, and my mom was in the same school. So, we'd had lunch every day, and we we knew each other's students, and just I had an amazing experience working in that school with my mom. And then eventually I moved off to California, and that was 15 years ago.
Wow. That's, I mean, obviously she's a mentor as well as, a guide. What a great opportunity for you to do. And do you have siblings, by the way?
Yeah, I have a sister who actually, I have a sister who's 4 years older than me, but she is a school psychologist. She was also, she was already well on her career path when I had begun this career path. And so I bounced a lot of stuff off her. She taught me a lot about, the things I was experiencing. She had really good insight into why things were happening, what I could do to find those bits of progress. And she's also a mentor of mine as well. So
yeah, for as much as our school systems have been under attack as of late and last several years, it's nice to know your entire family is dedicated to supporting the education system. That's amazing. So that's good.
Both of those women in my life are certainly very much an inspiration to me, for sure.
Love that.
That's fantastic.
That's
fantastic.
That's so great. So you came to California, and then so tell us about that path, because obviously it's led to where you are today.
Well, I packed up my stuff in Ohio, and I didn't really know where I wanted to settle. I had been to San Diego, North County, San Diego. I had surfed here. I had known that it's an awesome surf community, but I'd also know, you hear about Santa Cruz, you hear about Santa Barbara or the Central Coast. And so I drove to San Francisco, and I just spent a month camping and living out of my truck, surfing and checking out all of these communities. I love Santa Cruz. I love the whole Central Coast, San Luis Obispo, the entire coast is incredible, obviously. Yeah. But pretty much as soon as I drove down through Camp Pendleton into Oceanside, once again, even once I got into Oceanside, I just knew that North County, San Diego was where I wanted to settle. It was funny. My parents had planned, and they met me in San Diego. They flew out from Ohio, and they met me in San Diego, and they said, "Boy, that was a really great month you've had. Now get a job, find a place to live, and become an adult." Like, okay. So I quickly found a place to rent, and then I got on, EdJoin, which is the large database of California education jobs. And once again, I didn't have a credential or anything. I just had a couple months of experience, and I got on EdJoin, and I found a local school district that was looking for a special education aide, and I applied, and I got an interview, and I went down and sat down with the interview team at the Solana Beach School District. And after speaking with them, I was probably a 27-year-old young man at this time. And after the interview, the team clearly had a position for me. There was a young fourth grade student with cerebral palsy who needed a one-on-one aide, and I got that job. And I spent my first year in California as a one-on-one aide in a fourth grade classroom with an amazing young man with pretty severe cerebral palsy.
Wow! And
it was a fantastic year. Obviously, ups and downs, frustrations, but plenty of celebrations and progress. And wow, had a lot of fun doing that.
The site that you were talking about, it's called EdJoin.
EdJoin.
Yeah. Never even heard of it.
EdJoin.
At least within 10 years ago that I would have utilized it. It was the main, I think, state-based database for education jobs. I don't know if it still exists or not.
Yeah, so that's why we will.
It does. Yeah,
you can find it.
Looking now, yeah, looking at it right now.
We'll throw it up on the screen for those who are watching, and we'll put it into the chat so that people can see, because that's a phenomenal resource. And is that for just the state of California? Do you know, or is that a national database?
I remember it being just the state of California resource, but I think it was from the California Department of Education or whatever. I believe it was the main. And I think
it's beyond the state. I see listings for the state, but when you do a search, it asks for a state as well. So I'm just always fascinated by how many layers there are to the onion. You find yourself, you're conscious, you're awake, you know all these different things, and every time you turn around, there's like, wait a minute, new. For how long? I never knew about that.
Yeah. So, Kyle, this is what happens. We've been doing this for 2.5 years. We're like, that's a resource that we've never heard of before. That's amazing.
Okay. Yeah, that's how I mean, that's how I remember when I was going through the processes of trying to find different jobs throughout education in California. That was the only resource I really knew of.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
But then after that first year as a one-on-one aide, I started the next school year as an aide in a severe classroom. All right. But then the first week of school, the science teacher at the school. Now, science teachers in most elementary schools are classified teachers. They're not credentialed teachers. So you need a college degree, but you don't need a teaching credential. Okay. And around this same time in my life, as I mentioned, when I was on the Outer Banks, I began to find a passion for learning. I developed a very, very deep passion for science and for learning about science, the natural world all around us, NASA, astronomy, all types of things.
Kyle, let me ask you real quick. I'm sorry. Can you distinguish the difference between those two? You mentioned certification versus
credential. I'm sorry, no, classified versus credentialed. And a classified position would be a position that doesn't require a teaching credential.
Okay. And the teacher credentials, again, this might seem like very rudimentary, but the teaching credentials are obtained how? Is that generally through a degree or program?
Yeah. I got mine at going to night school that came along with a master's degree in education. But I think that if you were to, I believe that if you were to go through the process as an undergrad of getting a education degree, I think a credential probably comes along with that.
Gotcha.
Perfect. This is all helpful. And just on the just for anybody who's listening and not seeing the notes, it's edjoin.org. 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 I love that. I have actually just sent a note to my daughter, like, do you know edjoin.org? Because beyond the classroom, just know that there are options. So this is
and somebody might be listening who's like, I'd like to be a teacher. I have no idea where to begin.
Yeah. EdJoin's, I'm sure, a good resource to at least begin doing some research on it
and understanding what's out there, and then for that particular job, what's required. So love it. That's beautiful. Mm-hmm. All right.
So I had found this passion for science, and at the same time that the school year started, the science teacher had to take a leave of absence, and so I immediately said, "Hey, I'm interested in teaching elementary science." So after the first week of school, they gave me the job, and I just absolutely loved and adored that job. Kindergarten through 6th grade in my science lab. One thing is that I was in a well-resourced school, so I had lots of equipment, I had lots of materials, which makes that whole process much easier.
Sure.
But I believe that science can be taught to anybody with some very rudimentary household materials that can be utilized. But you give a kindergartner magnets and some paper clips, and they think you're a wizard. You can absolutely, with just very simple things, some toothpicks and some marshmallows, and all of a sudden you're engineering. And as I was saying earlier about how I didn't understand that I enjoyed learning, I think science is a fantastic gateway to get young people to find a passion for learning, to cultivate a passion for learning. And so I really succeeded in that as an elementary science teacher for a handful of years. Yeah.
And those were neurotypical children in that particular classroom, or?
Yeah, but yes, that was the whole school. So that was the K through 6, the whole school. But at the same time, because of my interest in special education, and because at this time also I started going to night school to receive my own personal teaching credential as I was teaching science, I was developing curriculum and inviting the special needs classrooms into my science lab for their own time. And it's the same thing. I absolutely believe that particularly hands-on science can and should be utilized with students of all levels of ability and disability. I fully believe that.
Well, and in fact, I think that we learn a lot more from those folks who have certain sensitivities or I don't want to say deficiencies, because, when you're deficient in one area, you tend to have super hyper efficiency in another area. So we learn a lot about, things like sound frequencies and light frequencies and how different lights affect us, where I think if you're neurotypical, you don't really generally think about that stuff. But if you happen to have some sort of sensitivity around it, it creates an awareness. And I think that we all learn from that experience. So yes, I agree. I think it's great. Science as a basis for education for people of all abilities. It seems to make a lot of sense. I love that.
I hold that to this day, that science can be a gateway to teach anybody to learn how to learn.
Yeah, sure.
But it's the same thing too. I've stressed this I've always stressed this with my students. Like, science is everywhere. You go outside, and the clouds and the wind and the rainbow that shines through the glass, the window, and there's science everywhere. And if you can develop some interest in that, it makes everything far more interesting.
For sure.
Let me ask you something about that. You just said something that didn't catch my attention, but just like grabbed me by the throat, and talked about the way in which, you didn't say the way in which, you said, but the way you learn. And I've always had this feeling, there's a meme that's been around for years. I got to find it. I always seem to bring it up once a month, of a teacher sitting in the woods of the classroom, and the students are animals, and they're all sitting at desks, and they're taking a test. And the test is that they climb a tree. And if you don't pass the test, not only do you fail the class, but I'm like, that affects how you think of yourself. Well, the fish didn't climb the tree, so the fish is dumb. And I think Einstein had a comment about that as well. And I've thought it's so important for us to teach in the manner in which we learn. What is your thought on, how we develop the manner in which we learn? Some things are kind of, but by touch, experience, it's all different. What is your thought on that?
Well, I fully believe that another key to education is what I believe they would refer to as multimodal education.
Right.
Where young people should be doing and hearing and touching, seeing and smelling, and just as many different ways as you can get it and get the information or the experiment or whatever in front of them is vital, because we all learn in many different ways, and and then we're also combinations of all of those things too, and
those ways are, is it kinesthetic? Is that one of them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's
right. Okay.
Kinesthetic would be like the hands-on of the science experiments. That's the simple things like the baking powder and the vinegar, or the Mentos and the Coke, all of those types of things.
Right.
And I'm sorry, I'm just like grabbing the conversation, trying to like jump through and get in your face and cutting you off, because you got my attention that way. Because of all the things that I'm grateful for this show, one of them, it has been one that has caused me to really just take a look at myself. And I've been convinced that as hard as people tried to teach me, I wasn't always taught in the manner in which I learned. And as much as my parents were like, let's send him here, let's send him there, had all kind of tutoring and everything, I have never been diagnosed with anything. And I am certain that I just got missed, because this show has me very aware of how I process things. My conversations with Brian and my wife, more so than anybody else, has me think of those things. And it's enough for me to say that I sure do wish that you were teaching back in the 70s when I was a kid. You were my teacher.
Well, I think that I think that as a society, our understanding of education has changed quite a bit. And in a lot of ways, it's evolved. In a lot of ways, I think it's somewhat constricted by other factors. But
I agree. Yep.
And I had great teachers. Yeah.
Sure. But I also believe along the same lines, I fully believe in high interest topics make such an enormous impact. And the way that I teach now is that, if my student is very much interested in soccer, world soccer. Okay. And so what we do from that is we end up studying a team, and then that team is from a city, and that city has the city has a flag, and it's on a map. And then we go through the history of that city, and the history of that city branches out into all types of other topics as well. So I believe that a lot of students benefit from being engaged with high interest topics. And that does take a whole lot of differentiation, and that isn't always available to teachers. But I hope that more students are being engaged with things that they're interested in, because it's also a much better gateway to them finding a way to enjoy learning.
Wow. Now you said your student, and believe it or not, this is going to sound crazy. My mind is like in 50 different places at once. So I don't know if in your chronology and path, we talked about your path from school to your student. So tell us about that.
So,
yeah.
Okay. So I was teaching elementary science and going to night school, and I very much enjoyed the teaching of elementary science, and I enjoyed my credentialing program as well. I learned a whole lot throughout my credentialing program, and then I went and student taught, and I was still teaching science at the same time, and then I was working as a science teacher with a special ed credential, and a family that had a sixth grade student invited me to come along on a unique learning adventure. And this was 9 years ago, where this family said, hey, would you like to come be the full-time one-on-one teacher for our child? And it sounded like a really interesting opportunity. And I said, sure. And that was 9 years ago. So we've been doing it for 9 years.
And what was his diagnosis?
He's a very, very unique young man. I don't believe that there are any clinical definitions for his disability. In his own way, I find him to be incredibly brilliant. There are disabilities in other areas, but there's zero behavior issues. He's just a young man that learns differently than a typical young person.
If you don't mind, again, just we don't talk about people specifically, so in generalities, describe some of the different ways that he learns. I'm fascinated by this. If you can.
Well, once again, the things that I've been talking about, and they're top of mind for me because they're the things that I've had success with him. Everything is an experiment. Okay, if we find a snail outside, we investigate the snail. We study the leaves of every plant and the clouds that pass by and the reason that the weather is the way that it is. And we do astronomy at night. There's a whole lot of science, and also another part of it is, and this connects to science. My school district actually they coined the term STREAM. So you've heard of STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math. Well, my original school district, actually, they added an R for research and an A for art to make it STREAM. But creativity, and there's a lot of creativity even in science. Somebody had to come up with the experiment that even helps us further our understanding. To come up with, to even ask the original question that leads to the experiment requires creativity. And so my student and I are constantly we've experimented with every possible art medium that we can get our hands on. We've sculpted and painted and blown glass, and we're both photographers, and so creativity is a big part of what we do also, and everything's an experiment. So that's where I found the most success with him, and the thing that we very much enjoy too. We have a ton of fun also.
Interesting. I just, if you're seeing, it's a little distracted. We're getting an echo. Just hearing that can echo. So I'm gonna unplug my mic and see if this all works out. So this is fascinating. I love this. I love the story. By the way, that is what you just described. That is how education should be taught. It should be, everything is an experiment. Everything is something to be learned. Everything is something that's going to hit on one subject or another, right? If you're going to take a trip, you put together a budget. You're talking about math. You're talking about, certain kinds of skills. If you travel someplace, it's geography. It's how do you get there? It's physics. There's like everything that you do, there's opportunity for learning every subject. So we've just gone, and I think that we need to, as an education, just as a society, realize, and by the way, we have access to technology that can make it better because we have more access to learning. certain kinds of things and not have to be stuck to the rote, textbook, top down delivery of information, and have it be engaged. Because I think that what you're doing is, theoretically, it's groundwork for how education can evolve. So I think it's fascinating. I'm going to unplug my mic for a second and see if we lose the echo here, but keep going.
Sure, and I appreciate the sentiment, although I would realistically, I would be afraid that the resources are an issue to that. The education does not have the resources that it needs to be as successful and efficient and productive as it should be. And I think education is the most important societal topic there is, because the youth become the decision makers, and without them receiving the critical thinking skills and the passion for learning, we're going to end up with an ignorant populace, and that's no good for anybody.
For sure. Either that or, social media delivers a very, educational.
Yeah. At this point, social media probably is maybe teaching the young people as much as any classroom is, and that's a scary thought.
I would agree.
If not more.
I would agree. If not
more.
That's a scary. But that's the thing also, and you'd be talking about technology. There is so much incredible content, and there's so much amazing tools that we have at our disposal that can help us teach and learn more efficiently and more productively. I just don't think that those tools are being utilized as well as they can be.
I agree.
It's so funny you say that. I saw a post by a friend who is getting ready to turn 70 and said that he called his insurance company about either about his policy or a new policy, and his premiums are going to be so much higher. And he said, oh my gosh, and he gave the amount, and people started commenting saying, get out, live your life. It's a shame what these life insurance companies are doing to us. And I don't think he knows that that's a portion of the primary work that I or Brian and I do. And I happened to respond to, I said, there are a lot of comments here. I said life insurance, and I thought about it because I've heard it said about money. But the truth is, almost anything worthwhile is either, that has the potential to be a great servant, but a horrible master. So the same is true if you're talking about money or technology. And so the problem isn't the technology. It always comes back to us. So whether you're talking about any instrument that has potential value, the value is then determined by whoever it is that's using it. And it's funny, you think of even the comments that we say, oh, technology is bad. Technology is this. Technology is what we make of it. It's just like a food that's delicious for you. It's, or delicious and maybe not good for you or whatever have you. It's in excess, you're a slave to it. So the same thing applies to any and everything that we do.
Yeah,
sure. That's a great point, Sean. Yeah.
I remember when Jordan was in a special learning facility, and we had family day, and they were discussing, and one of the administrators put up on the big screen a quote from somebody in society, and had left out some words, right? It was a space with an underline, and it was like, such and such is leading to the moral decay of our young generation. And if we continue to allow this general exposure to blank, we're going to see, all of this. And it was a lengthy paragraph, and this blank space was in many cases. You can look at it. And then they asked, what do you think they're talking about? And people raised their hand. They're like, well, they're talking about the internet. And then somebody said, no, they're talking about television. And somebody said, no, they're talking about, social media. And then they put the word in, and the original person who said it, and they were talking about books, and it was around the times of Socrates. And so every level of progression that we've made in education has always been attacked at first for being the reason for moral decay or social decay. And the reality is, and like we have right now with artificial intelligence, we've got people resisting, oh, this is going to be terrible for education, or people are going to plagiarize, blah, blah, blah. So let's tell people they cannot use artificial intelligence, instead of being progressive and saying, how could we use artificial intelligence in the education process to help guide and help? Because you can't take something and go, well, we're going to ban books in school, and when the kids graduate, oh, by the way, those books are there, artificial intelligence is there, the internet is there, so you're going to teach children and young students to avoid something that is going to be prevalent in their life. Doesn't make any sense to me. And so I think every time we've had some level of progress, everything they're saying about artificial intelligence today, they said about the internet, not that, oh, you can't use the internet to do research, you can't use the internet to do this stuff, as opposed to saying, how can we use the internet to enhance how we do research? And, having a one-on-one guide, today's society would be ideal for every parent. Now you're smiling. I see it on your face. So I'm sure you have a lot of commentary.
No, but and it's interesting you mentioned, as we were talking about this, I immediately thought of artificial intelligence, and my student and I have actually been studying it a lot recently. We've been using ChatGPT, and we just started using Bard, and we've made artificial intelligence art on a Discord, and we've been studying it. And I to counter your point a little bit, Brian, about how, yes, absolutely, we need to prepare students and allow them to access it and try and understand it. And to, I always say that it's important, students are going to be exposed to all types of things. And I don't think it's for us to keep them from it. I think it's for us to instill in them the values to be able to navigate it.
I agree.
Completely.
Ethically, we can't. We're not going to keep them from it. They're going to access it somehow. It's up to the parents and the teachers to then teach them how to do it in a healthy, ethical manner.
Well, it's funny because it's like when you hear kids who have, parents. Points I'm going to make. People who have, parents that are, pastors or preachers. Those are usually the kids that end up being the most rambunctious, the most rebellious, and the freakiest, so to speak, because they got so many shackles upon them. Here's how you breathe, and if you don't breathe in this manner, so what they want to do is go out and just breathe as they want. And I usually try and be as locked in as I can. I tend to have my iPad on because the Facebook broadcast is, there, and you kind of see it. And I happen to have this feed that popped up from Apple News that says, "The modern world is aging your brain. In a remote part of the Amazon, anthropologists and neuroscientists are learning about life and health without an embarrassment of riches." And I just think that's so bizarre considering the conversation that we're having. Funny. Now that makes you stop and think, that can't be AI. They're not listening. That's not what popped up, is it?
But Brian, I before I forget, I need to counter the point about
go ahead.
About from books to AI. Yeah. I think an important distinction, though, is that from written language to the printing press to the internet, the time span between them has only gotten much shorter. The exponential growth of technology, or the telescoping time of technology, and so from the internet, which is really only roughly 25 years old in most homes,
yep,
to the smartphone. To now, what we've been reading about over the past couple months is AI truly becoming very impactful. Yeah. I mean, I worry that we as a society, we as humans, aren't evolving or aren't maturing or understanding these technologies as fast as they're coming about. Yeah. I mean, social media has had an impact on society, certainly, and I'm not sure that still we use it as effectively. It's been around for a long time, and now all of a sudden there's going to be another paradigm shift, and we haven't figured out the previous paradigm shift, and there's really no way to stop it at this point. So yes, it's important for kids to understand it and to have exposure to it and utilize it in an appropriate manner. But I just worry that as a society as a whole, that these things are coming about more and more rapidly.
I agree, and I think that it would behoove us to utilize our educational system to do what you just said, to give some context to the understanding of how to use it, how to be, how to access information we access, but more importantly, how to create and how to generate. The television created a very passive audience. The internet created a very active audience, right? You had to actually go do something. And then social media kind of put us back into, really a combination, I guess, for those who are content creators to be generative, but a lot of passivity, people watching and looking, commenting, and now they're just sort of partially interfacing. Artificial intelligence is going to, if used properly, give us the opportunity to, again, step in and be generative. And I think, honestly, Kyle, that's probably the one thing that the evolution of technology has created. We've gone from a passive, quiet, read a book on a couch to much more active involvement and engagement. And I think that that's what we need to see, more active engagement with one another, with content, with each other, with education. And, again, we could get on this high horse. And of course, as we're like at the end of the hour, we're just involved in this conversation, which I think is probably worthy of another longer conversation. But Kyle, I think that because of the work that you're doing, and I'll just put a little, you can say this too, but you've been working one-on-one with, your student now for quite a few years, this great family that involved you in their, in their travels. You've been with them now for quite some time. Yeah.
Yes, 8 or 9 years. We lose track. Yeah,
8 or 9 years, and that's really, and again, that's really amazing, and the work that you're doing is incredible. I see. You were concerned we weren't going to have enough to talk about, and here it is. We're like almost an hour into this conversation. Before we sign off, and we're not going to sign off, Sean's going to ask you a question, but before he does, is there anything else that you want to say that we haven't had a chance to cover in the stuff? What you've done is fascinating. You've given us a resource people want to talk about. I love this conversation about education. I could talk about this stuff all day long. I love the work that you're doing, and I think that you're forging a path for an opportunity to share what you're doing and have a huge impact on our education in this society. But is there anything you'd like to add before we?
Well, just in terms of what we were just talking about, I tell my student, he's prone, as many of us are, he's prone to just like plug this thing into his forehead and just aimlessly scroll Instagram all day. And I always tell him, go do something, go create something worthy of being on Instagram, as opposed to sitting and staring at Instagram. Go make Instagram as opposed to just plugging into it and seeing what other people are making. So that was just one thought I had.
Good stuff. Well, Sean's going to ask you our magical question we do at the end of every episode. So, Sean, throw it over to you. Kyle, I love this. We're going to have coffee. We're going to have more conversations.
Sounds great.
Totally.
Thank you for the opportunity.
This is huge.
Sure. Thank you. So, Kyle, our ability to change the world, make it a better place, is tied in some way, great or small, to our ability or willingness to change ourselves. With that in mind, give us just one example of a thought or a belief that you once strongly believed, but now no longer believe to be true.
Okay. Well, growing up for me in Northeast Ohio, sports was the end all be all of everything. I grew up playing every single sport that we could get our hands on. It was all that me and my friends did. It was all I did all the way through high school. I look back at some of my projects from like third grade, like write a book report. And of course it was a sports book. Write a report about a country. And of course it was based around the native sport of that country. It was all sports all the time. And although I'm still a huge sports fan and I love sports, when I think back, like my ability to shoot a jump shot right now, or my ability to throw a curveball right now, means absolutely nothing to me. It has zero value. And I also believe in youth sports. I think it's great for team building and making friends and responsibility and failure and all of these things. I absolutely believe in it. But sports were such a core part of me growing up that now when I think back, I wish I had been on the debate team. I wish I had been in theater. I wish I had been in the science club, in the photography club. I wish that I had branched out into other activities and expanded my horizons at an earlier age. I feel like those things would have benefited me more. So I also believe that the path that carried me to where I am, I'm super fulfilled and happy for the opportunity. So, but yeah, I wish that I had a broader horizons as a young person, I suppose.
Yeah. That's interesting.
That's great. I want to encourage people to ask that question
I
as
feel that
often
way.
as possible. Good, Brian.
I feel that way. I mean, I feel that way as well. I feel like I wish I had done more things in school that broadened my. I mean, I did things. I played sports, and I wish I had done more. I'm more interested now as an adult in those things that I had exposure to when I was a child and in schooling, and then I never took advantage of. So.
In places of education, I think about that now, about being in university and having the resources. I went to Ohio University, the Bobcats, go Bobcats. It's a medium-sized, really beautiful university. I think about the resources that I would have had access to, to expand my learning or to just try new things, and I didn't take advantage of those things then either. And it was the same in high school. There's all these different clubs. He's a Bruin. I respect that.
I went to a school that had access to all that stuff, and I didn't either. I was in a fraternity, and my life involved classes in my fraternity. I didn't really even do that, and I had tons of exposure as well. So I hear you. And in high school too, and I wish I had done certain things in high school. I've encouraged my son, who's in high school now, to get out and plays baseball. He's in the art theater arts program. He's doing stuff, and we try to encourage him to do more of that. And then Kyle, I'm so inspired by what you're doing, and I'm serious. Like, I want us to get together and have and get together for a meal. There's so much that we still want to talk about, and I'm grateful to you for being on this podcast with us. I know Sean is as well. And as we sign off, and we'll say thank you one last time. But as we sign off, I want to thank everybody for who joined us live on Facebook, and those on catching us after the fact on YouTube and on podcast everywhere. For our family down in the U.S. Virgin Islands on WSTX AM radio, thank you for listening in. If you want to reach out to us, hit us up on our email. We are just two dads. We are just two dads at gmail.com. Go to Billy Footwear and buy adaptive footwear if you need to, and join us at the Den if you're interested. If you're a caregiver and want to be involved in a men's group where it's safe to have a conversation about the things that impact all of us. Join us in the Den every other week. We're meeting again this Sunday, and we've put into the show notes a link to a form to register and join us. So hopefully you'll do that. And as I say every show at the end, empathy and love, always more important, even more important today than it has ever been. With empathy, we seem to be everybody's a little on edge, and has been on edge for a couple of years since the pandemic. We need to be empathetic about what's going on with people around us. We don't know what their story is, so be empathetic. Ask questions as opposed to making a judgment. And if you look at the world through lenses of love, the world just looks like a different place. So love and empathy as much as you possibly can. And thank you for joining us. And Kyle, thank you for joining us today. Dude, I'm totally inspired. Totally inspired.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. This has really been enjoyable. Good. I'm glad. I'll throw it over to Sean to lock us out here, bud, and kick off episode 132, by the way.
Again, thank you, Kyle. Thank you for the time. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I'm so grateful for this platform. We get to meet and connect with great people, and there's more people that are, in the chat that have recently become members of the family and have reached out and followed us. We can encourage you to continue to do so. And Brian and I like to speak with each other and invite the audience to our conversation as opposed to speaking to the audience. But I do want to say that anyone that heard Kyle's answer to the question, I'm just sharing my inspiration from it, which is, if you're thinking about something that you wish you did when you were younger, maybe you took a broader approach to your studies, whatever the case is, if you're in life's picture right now, don't hesitate to do that. Go ahead and broaden those horizons and study something else, learn something else, taste something new, smell something new, different place, different everything. And remember, again, questions are more powerful than statements. Let us remain more childlike and less childish. Get curious about what it's like to be in somebody else's shoes. And again, thank you to everyone and everyone within the sound of my voice, and everyone watching wherever you may be. Thank you for watching, and we love you. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.